Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points, joined on this fine Thursday afternoon by Harrison Fagan of SB Nation. Harrison, one day I'll remember your titles, but you know what? Do I get credit for saying of SB Nation? Can I have?
I think that's good enough.
All right, there you go. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Raj made this point last night in passing, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I'm eventually going to write about this today for Clutch Points, and I'll probably narrate it a little bit later tonight for tonight's lowdown. But essentially, how to factor in LeBron James with the Luka timeline and roster management and all of that good stuff. And I think that's a good topic for you and I to kind of jump off on, because it'll send us in all kinds of directions, Harrison. And those are usually my favorite kind of episodes with you, because it struck me today. We've been doing this for like a decade.
Close. It's got to be, if not a decade, then very close to it. When we started, no, it's like the 2014 draft. So 2015, I think, was when I really in content. Like I think the Randall year was the first year I wrote anything about the team, but I wasn't really covering the team until 2015. So I think it is like about 10 years now we've been doing this.
Right. There's a channel of mine of our first podcasts that exists out there somewhere.
I hope not.
We should probably take down. I'll check the dates on that at some point. But yeah, it struck me today because I listened to these. I was listening to, I forget what show it was, but they were like, wow, we've been doing this for 3 years. And I was like, yeah, that seems like a long. Whoa, how long have Harrison and I been doing this for? And what that means is that we get to then have chemistry to kind of wander around on a topic. And I think this is one of those topics that we can wander around on.
And do our timelines line up? You know, it's one of the things that we have to discuss. Like at some point, it's like you're getting older. Yeah. I'm obviously saying extremely young. So it's just, you know, is it like a LeBron Luka type thing where eventually the feed has to start to build around me and Raj and we sort of kick you out?
Should I be concerned that Jen is making this same point? That like
we have a group chat, me, Dr. Jen, and Raj. It's the Lakers Lounge collaborators. Sabrina's in there.
She's like everyone that has to deal with
you on a regular basis.
A quick reminder on that great note that to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button. If you guys are listening to this or watching this on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. And if you're listening to this via podcast, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your pods, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. All right. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and
point to the logo. You pointed to where it says 2 timelines.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you got to get a little to your right, I think, to get to the Odyssey logo.
Well, because the problem is like there's a difference between maybe the video you're looking at and then the video that's actually playing here.
Oh, okay.
Anyway. Yeah, the 2 timelines thing. So essentially, Raj talked briefly about how LeBron at this stage of his career kind of sort of complicates things a little bit, because, you know, we're talking about should the Lakers trade Rui. Now there's a report out there that apparently the Cavs are kicking the tires on Dorian Finney-Smith. Obviously there's been a ton of conversation about Austin Reeves, and if LeBron retires, now all of a sudden, do you need to keep Austin around for the sake of a secondary ball handler? And all the while, you know, we don't know how long LeBron is going to play. Nobody has any idea how long he is interested in playing for. There's some talk that maybe he wants to stick around long enough to play with Bryce if Bryce gets to the league. I don't think Bryce is as good as Bronny was
I
entering the
believe
draft.
he's a walk-on at
Yeah.
Arizona, I think, or Arizona
Yeah.
State. Yeah, I think it's Arizona.
So I don't know that it's Arizona.
Like scholarship, I think LeBron can probably cover the tuition fees. He's probably pretty
He
solid
probably
there.
doesn't want to.
Yeah.
No wonder he's not taking a pay cut. God damn it.
He's like, have you seen these student fees?
He's like, I can only resell a book for what? Like, but yeah, I maybe it's the Bryce thing. For one thing, LeBron just made second team All NBA, so he's clearly still really bleeping good at basketball. We did see, I think that was the first year. Last year was the first time that I really saw some real athletic decline, which is shocking for a dude playing at age 40, that's the first time that we're really seeing it. But yeah,
I mean, I think we've seen it extremely gradually, judging by his stand. Like he's obviously
you go back and look at it,
like 2016 LeBron, like 2010 LeBron. Like he's been gradually declining in athleticism for a while, but it's like his decline is like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's like it's so like he was started out so high above everyone else that it's like his decline is more like back to the pack a little bit of the top athletes versus just being a one of one. In his own stratosphere.
Well, I guess the way I would phrase it is this was the first time year to year that I felt the noticeable decline.
Yeah.
Right. And if that happens again, where does that put him next season? And so there's all these things going on, Harrison. And again, I'm going to write about this. It's a really tricky needle to thread because every team basically in the NBA would be like, please let us have LeBron. And only Lakers fans, only I specifically probably will be like the annoying one to say, yeah, but it's a little tricky, and I'm curious, just kind of off the top of your head. For one thing, I have two timelines, written at the bottom of the screen. Those are two of the worst words that an NBA fan can hear, right? The notion of two timelines, because you aren't going to succeed on either one of them. So,
well, the first team to actually sort of do it was the Spurs, but they didn't use the phrase two timelines. And so it becomes associated with the Warriors' two timelines, which are like, timeline one in spite of timeline two, it's like, it's not necessarily, it wasn't the best justification for the two timelines plan. It's like, the first timeline was still just good enough to get you over the top
to carry the second timeline, across.
And it's like, like Jordan Poole kind of helped a little bit,
Yeah. So, where do you stand on that? Like, is this, I guess we'll start with, do you think this is a worthy concern? Something that should stick around in the back of my head?
I mean, I think it's a concern just because of all the new cap rules making it harder and harder to build a team. Like, you just have less flexibility than ever before. So obviously LeBron being around means that LeBron is going to be around and extremely expensive, likely, which does make it harder to fill in some of the gaps around the other team. But LeBron, he's obviously earned that money. I'm not going to sit here and pocket watch him or whatever, or say what he does or doesn't need for, the tuition for his son next year and all of that, and to buy an NBA team eventually and all of that stuff. But I understand why I think people are right to have like a little bit of concern about it, because you are sort of, to some degree, it's like if you're serving two bosses, you're sort of serving no one, especially if they're telling you to do different things. And it's like, can Rob sort of thread that needle of keeping Luka happy, putting together a team that makes sense for Luka while still utilizing how good LeBron is, but also doing it within the constraints that come with how expensive he and Luka are going to be as sort of your core duo? And are they the most seamless fit in the world? Is there too much of their skill sets that's overlapping and duplicative? But at the same time, it's like, the two timelines thing is not the same to me as the concern about like the Warriors doing it or things like that, because LeBron and Luka are much more promising as like a 2 timeline, age gap disparity than Steph and James Wiseman.
Yeah.
Luka's a little better, I think.
Slightly better
Yeah.
than James Wiseman in his dreams, even. Do you think James Wiseman has ever dreamed that he's as good as Luka? Do you think he's capable of that?
I don't know that he cares enough.
I guess that's right. Like I have James Wiseman dreaming about basketball.
He gives me like Andrew Bynum energy, where he's dreaming about like building RC cars and stuff. I don't know. Maybe he does really like basketball. I have no idea, but I just didn't get that.
I think Bynum definitely did. I don't think James Wiseman did. But yeah, I think so LeBron is on the books if he opts into his player contract, which Shams has indicated he thinks he will. $52.6 million next year. And then, potentially the year after that, you're looking at that potentially coming off of the books. And to me, it's impossible
to me, I don't understand what the benefit of that is for LeBron beyond like, does he think the Lakers are going to try and hardball him in negotiations if he opts out or something like that? Because he always does the 1+1 thing, so that it's like in the case of catastrophic injury, you still have that. Like he took it last year so that, if he had, God forbid, if he had gotten hurt last year, then he could have still had the 50 million payout for this year as lasting security. I'm not sure I understand why he would be opting in. That's the part that hasn't been cogently explained to me. I believe the reporting. I just don't understand what his motivation is.
It might just be his last year.
But why not secure the extra? Yeah, I guess maybe if you just know it's your last year, I guess who cares about securing the final year and you just leave.
Yeah, the only, and this isn't reporting or anything, this is just me speculating, but the only reason I can think of is that it's going to be his last year. And if he retires on a 1-1, that means he leaves 50-something million dollars on the table. And this gives him the out to where
he doesn't want that calling to him, like the Green Goblin.
Right.
Mask. It's like the last $50 million is like, LeBron, come on, just one more year.
That's right. Yeah,
you can have me at the end. Think of how many textbooks you can buy for Bryce.
He could even get a dorm. Yeah, I that's my only kind of theory that makes any kind of sense off the top of the head. Again, as I said,
I don't know why you wouldn't want to leave your options open. Just like what if he changes his mind?
Well, but like I think his options will always be pretty open. That's kind of my point, actually, is that like I think the Lakers at some point, it's an impossible conversation to have, and LeBron has done so much for the Lakers and for the sport that it's a really awkward conversation to have. It's like, hey man, what are you thinking? Like, what's your 2-year plan? What's your 3-year plan? And because we're trying to game this out. We're trying to figure out how long are we going to have an elite power forward on our team? How long are we going to have your contract on the books? How long will we need? Like, if we move Austin now, will you be here for a couple of years so that we can find another secondary ball handler? All of these are questions that, and I kind of wish that he and Clutch and the Lakers were on better standing. Not saying that it's bad, but I don't necessarily think I would go so far as to say it's
I don't
good
know
either.
Coordinating on that level anymore.
Yeah, right. But they need to be, is the thing, right? Like that's the only way any of this works. It's just like the basketball for next season. The only way that works with Luka and LeBron and JJ, with their concept or preconceived notions of what this team should operate like. The only way that works is if there's a ton of communication and strategy discussion. And I think, to me, and I want to be absolutely clear, I'm not pushing LeBron out the door. This isn't the Michael Scott, closing the door on that old guy in that episode of The Office. Like, this isn't me doing that to LeBron. This is me just kind of saying, like, what's the plan here? And I know it's a really tough question to ask LeBron also, because you're asking him about his basketball mortality,
Yeah.
and I think he knows, he's aware of it as a concept. But if you're basically saying, like,
they're like basically asking him to do basketball estate planning, which is always an awkward conversation.
It really is. As somebody who has had that conversation a bunch lately, it sucks.
It's like, so Bron, how long are you planning on sticking around? Because we're just trying. How you feeling?
And Grandpa lived to be 90 something. How you feeling? Like, but yeah, it's like, it's this thing. It's this, you can't not address it. You can't not think of it. And I think some Lakers fans go a little too far when it's like, just get him out of here. We're done. This and that. I think that's too far. But I also think we'd be stupid to not think about it. I think it would be doing Luka a disservice. And by the way, Luka takes priority here. Like, that's the other part of all of this, is that when you have, like, it's a lot, it's actually, even while on one hand, Harrison, like you talked about earlier, the notion of the two timelines, when one timeline is LeBron, the other timeline is Luka, that's easier because they're both really good at basketball. Where it's like James Wiseman and Steph, those two timelines were always kind of dumb because James Wiseman wasn't very good at basketball.
Yeah.
And by the way, did you see the report today from, I think it was Anthony Slater, about Kuminga? How, like, Kerr's like, I want you to be Sean Marion, and Kuminga's like, I want to be Melo. Like, but
I can hear Steve Kerr saying, I want you to be our Sean Marion.
I can hear Jonathan Kuminga closing the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I this is the part of this is, like, what makes it tricky, though, even while from a basketball standpoint, the two timelines are easier to execute. From an organizational standpoint, it makes it trickier because the person that you have to have as a much higher priority is Luka. While, like, it's not a Luka Dirk situation, because Dirk wasn't Dirk anymore.
Yeah,
and
that
wasn't close to Dirk
timeline
anymore.
was at the end. They were in Dirk endgame.
Yeah, it was Dirk. Even Dirk was like, guys, I'll stick around, but I'm not very good.
Yeah, he's like, I'm coming off the bench. I will play once a week.
Yeah. But like, LeBron was just, what'd you call him? LeDraymond? Is that what you called him?
I mean, that's basically what he turned himself into.
But that's the thing. Dirk couldn't do that. Yeah, like, there are not very many examples of situations that the Lakers find themselves in where they're ushering in this new era with this brand new franchise player, while the old franchise player is still really good. I guess the Kareem Magic thing was an example.
That was two good timelines. It was two guys that were still really, like, Kareem was still like borderline MVP level when Magic got there.
Yeah. But I guess it helped that Kareem wasn't so close to the end when Magic got there. Kareem was still in his prime. Kareem
tail end of it.
Well, that Kareem, when they won their first championship together, was really, really good. No, he sprained his ankle, and obviously you have all the lore building that resulted from Kareem spraining his ankle in that NBA final series. But
yeah, Magic was the original LeDraymond in that series.
I mean, in many ways, minus the defense, he wasn't anywhere near as good defensively. But it's such a difficult, and this is incredible podcasting on my part, because it's this subject that is really there are so many dynamics to it. But when you factor in the Luka aspect of this, the Lakers kind of sort of have to be kind of cutthroat about this, right?
Well, I mean, I know, I understand that you would certainly argue that they should be, and I think there's an argument to be made for that. But we also, like, we live in the reality that we live in. We live on this timeline, and on this
Yeah.
timeline, they're not going to be cutthroat with LeBron, who basically, bailed them out and resuscitated this ownership group of the franchise from sort of being stuck on the treadmill of mediocrity. And I know that, there's been a lot of mediocrity since then, but I don't think that you can sort of underrate how much they want to end things, I think, with him on good terms, and they want to be viewed as, this is how we treat stars on the way out, so that next star X, Giannis, if you want to move west in a couple years, and you want to sort of have one last chapter in LA and make Space Jam 3, like, we want to be open for that.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to be cutthroat with LeBron, is my point.
No,
Maybe they've been more cutthroat in terms of, like, we're just not going to do certain things that you want us to do, but they are not going to say, we are not going to pay you the money that you want us to pay you, and try to sort of usher you out on the terms that you want to be ushered out on. They aren't going to get into hardball negotiations with LeBron over contract.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, that's never how they've operated. And again, LeBron, when you consider where the Lakers were when LeBron got there versus the way that he is leaving them, he's done enough to exit stage left on whatever terms he sees fit. It's just also really difficult, as Edgar pointed out a second ago. You can't have, like, it was easy for the Lakers to have the Kobe retirement tour while they were intentionally losing games, because he was really good at losing basketball games back then.
Stop.
I think he was.
You're right, but it's unnecessary. Like,
okay,
it's
fair. But like this time though, when you have Luka and your intentions are to win championships while Luka's in his prime, man, and he, if not for the calf injury that as Kirk kind of talked about, really kind of doomed his season, he had that calf injury and still looked brilliant at times for the Lakers, and is coming off of the season that he had previously, where you can make a really good argument he should have won MVP. But yeah, it's insane that, and it's a good insane, because there are so many things going on that almost every other franchise, I would say, outside of OKC, would die for. But yeah, I think for the sake of building this team here moving forward, that is something that you need to take into account. From just a team building standpoint, if you were Rob Pelinka, and you own that incredible leather jacket with zippers from both sides.
I bet it's so warm during those Los Angeles, cold winter beach walks.
I just want to know about the zippers.
Yeah.
Why does it zip from both directions?
That's just, that's the style right now. I think I take all my style tips from Rob Pelinka.
But anyway, imagine you're Rob Pelinka and you look like Rob Lowe, and you're trying to game out
that hair. That would be so nice. Oh,
well, it's going to.
It's nicer than mine. And I could sell that leather jacket and go to Turkey and get some hair plugs. It's
just all of a sudden look like John Cena.
Yeah. You guys are gonna know that I got a raise above what I should be paid when I show up on this podcast, and I'm looking like John Cena. I have like a better hairline than Anthony. It's like to hear,
I've noticed my hairline is going back. I'll put my hat on, and all of a sudden it's like it used to be here, and now it's just anyway. But no, I don't think it was ever there. That's pretty low. It was probably around here. Anyway. The how would you game this out though? Like the notion of trading Rui and Dorian Finney-Smith being older, and the physicality that you lose by trading LeBron, or the creativity that you lose by not trading LeBron but trading Rui. and the creation and initiation that you lose by trading Austin, those are things that you can kind of plan for in the short term with LeBron. But outside of that, if you're only getting one more year out of it, then now all of a sudden you have to replace it all over again. So what would you do there?
So I think my thing is like we all obviously value Rui after sort of the growth that he's made over the last couple of years and the way that he's turned himself into a guy that I think can contribute to winning, which was there were major question marks about that when he came over from Washington about like how good is this guy actually? And I think that he's shown an actual commitment to trying to do the things that his team needs him to do to win. Now, again, like he's not able to guard centers at the level that the last year's Lakers needed him to do, but that's also not a totally fair ask. And I think that in a more reasonable role, he is someone that has shown that he's a good player and like a helpful NBA player. But I also don't think that he's that hard to replace. You know, like the Lakers got Rui for Kendrick Nunn and I think a couple seconds, maybe 1 second. Yeah. And so, you know, if you are to use him as salary ballast as your sort of human trade exception in this analogy, and it's a, you know, you go and get center X to bring in to sort of more fill a need for the roster. I think the main thing that you're losing, I know everybody always brings up that you're losing sort of some of the athleticism and physicality and stuff. I think that you hope that you're replacing that to a greater degree with whatever center you're bringing in, and that it's just a player that is a better fit as a lob threat for Luka than Rui currently is, and someone that can, you know, sort of maximize Luka in a certain way. And then when LeBron retires, you can get another Rui. You know, like that's not someone that's impossible to find. You know, again, like I don't know that you can get an Austin on the contract that he's on, but he's not going to be on that contract for much longer. And so, you know, you trust your scouts and you hope that you find someone who can contribute, maybe not at that level, but on the cheap. But they found Austin off the scrap heap. And so, again, I'm not saying that they can find another Austin and that it's that easy, but I think that you can find another Rui who's sort of a 3-4 role player, you know, if you do end up needing someone of that archetype. There are guys that are reclamation projects around the league every year that, you know, if you have the right coaching staff and you bet on JJ's sort of gamifying player development through app-based deliverables, then, you know, you hope that you can create another Rui.
I was thinking about the physicality aspect, like right as we were getting ready to record. And one of the knocks on Rui is that he doesn't always play as big as he is. And if the reason that you don't want to trade a player is because of the athleticism and physicality, and the guy that you're holding up as the physical athletic dude doesn't always utilize that stuff, I'm good. You know,
that's what I mean. Like he's like simple. One of the most athletic guys on the Lakers, but that is an extremely low bar right now.
Yeah.
You know, that's not necessarily a reason in and of itself to keep him.
Yeah. Couldn't the same be said kind of about Austin?
I mean, I think Austin is better than a lot of scrap heap reclamation project guys. I don't think that you could replace Austin's.
He was at one point, but yeah.
I don't think that you could replace his projection or his production as easily, but could you get 70-80% of it? Do you need the full Austin production on a team with Luka? I think is the other question.
Yeah, especially when that Austin is making $35-40 million a year.
Exactly.
Yeah, the more that I kind of think about it, Harrison, I'm really starting to come around to the idea of a gap year, and it gives you like I don't know that I want the Lakers to move their first rounder this year.
Wasn't last year kind of a gap year? Like what does gap year look like? Like you're saying, you know, just LeBron and Luka, and you trade other guys for what? Like
I would look
at trade. Will be back better.
Yeah, I would trade. I would consider Dalton a pseudo first rounder. I would consider Rui a pseudo first rounder. I would try to facilitate a trade using my expirings that get me another second rounder here and there, and I would utilize those assets. But I wouldn't touch my first rounder this year, that 2031 or 2032 first. That way, I have that ready for whenever LeBron does retire, and then from there you can kind of start charting out that post LeBron era, and you have at that point hopefully a solid offer for whatever second best player that you're lining up for Luka. The other part of this too, Harrison, that I've been thinking about, especially since my conversation with Raj, is every other executive, agent, like think of any possible source that you could possibly talk to. Every single person I've spoken to is like, we are freaking out about what could possibly happen this offseason. And you look at almost every team and names, depending on the team, 2 through 15 are on the table for who could possibly get moved. And in some cases, names 1 through 15 on that roster are sitting there kind of nervous. And it just doesn't make any sense.
You think the Hornets have any untouchables?
Mark Williams? Like,
like, and then the rest of the league is not going to touch him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The rest of the league heard about what the Lakers found on that physical, and they're like, all right, we're good. But anyway, like the point that I was, trying to get to is that if all of these other players and all of these other teams are battening down the hatches and boarding up their windows for this offseason, I feel like the Lakers kind of have to enter the offseason with that same approach. And this notion of like the core of Luka and LeBron and Rui and Austin is kind of farcical to me, because I don't think any team really has, outside of the ones remaining, the ones that we just saw playing in the conference finals. I don't think very many teams have like a core that they are hard pressed to ever move off of. I think everybody, if everybody is getting ready for an insane summer, then the Lakers should be thinking the same thing with Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura.
I believe you're reporting that they view Rui as part of the quote unquote core, but it's like, this is the core of a team that just lost in 5 games. And it's like, I'm sorry, Rui is not part of the core. He's not part of the real core. You can say he's like, oh, he's one of our guys that we value, whatever. But it's like, that's like saying that I'm trying to think of like a team currently in the conference. It's like Indiana is like, oh, Obi Toppin's part of our core. I don't know if we can move off of him. It's like, no, I mean, he helps, but it's not someone that is unreplaceable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're probably going to have that conversation about people much higher than Obi Toppin on that roster.
Yeah.
Right. Because they have not paid luxury taxes in my lifetime. But they're going to have to, if they're going to pay Miles Turner and keep Nesmith and all of that stuff.
And I think circling back to the gap year thing, I'm just not sure what does that look like for the Lakers, and how do you sell Luka on that is sort of my question, because do you sell him that it's like, hey, we're getting financial flexibility, but we're going to try and build the best team that we can right now? Do you go into extension talks with him and just be like, look, it's going to take us a year.
That's true.
We get our books right, and it's going to be things are going to be great next summer. Sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
With no evidence. We don't know what we're going to do, but promise it's going to be good. But so lock in 5 years.
I mean, he extended under such circumstances with Dallas right now.
He's a couple of years older now.
He is, and he doesn't have the he saw himself as a one-team player forever.
And he's firmly entering. Yeah, it's different to have those conversations with someone that you just saw keep, Dirk around for 20 years and had just drafted you, versus a team that, traded for you. And now you're feeling like, oh, wait, could they trade me at some point? Do I trust these guys? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Trevor made the same point when I talked about a gap year too. And that's the reason that we're having this conversation, because if this is what the Lakers were getting ready for, they were riding out the stream with AD and LeBron.
And last year was sort of already a gap year to some degree. They had such a weird roster that they weren't able to. They already had to tell Luka, hey, look, we did our best. We tried to get Mark Williams. I'm sorry his back is made of silly putty, but we're going to try and fix it this summer. And then what do? You go into this summer and you're like, well, we traded Rui and Austin for Kristaps Porzingis and a salary dump, and you like him, right? But next year, maybe Giannis. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Sign on the dotted line, please.
I don't think they would trade Austin for Kristaps.
And so, no, I don't think so either. I'm just making up one of like, I don't understand what a gap year means in this context, where are you going into this and you're just essentially telling Luka, you're like, hey, we'll give it our best shot, but this is probably not a year where you're going to win. Like, how do you sell him on something like that entering extension talks?
Yeah,
I guess
and
maybe you
that's
sell him on the 5-year plan of like, hey, here's who we can get if we clear our books and if we sort of wait out the LeBron retirement tour. But it's like, does LeBron want to have like a meaningless gap year retirement tour? Like, I think he still wants to try and win and stuff like that. And so you have a lot of pressure from people. LeBron doesn't have as much power as Luka in this situation anymore, obviously. But you have the two top guys on the team that if you're just basically telling them like, hey, this isn't going to be like a real year, like how motivated are they and how much of a disaster does next year look like?
I guess it just depends to the extent you can be competitive in said gap year, right? Like I don't know. I keep on going back to
I certainly
Darius's
don't think the Lakers should be
hypothetical.
like, let's throw every single draft pick that we have at the wall and try to win like right now. But they should be trying to do something to try and at least take another step forward if they can.
Yeah, I guess the difference would be trading for a Nick Claxton type where you have to move that first rounder to get him, or
Yeah.
trading for a DeAndre Ayton type center who you don't have to include the first four, but you're a lot more nervous when he shows up, right? And
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean that's something
Does
that they would
Luka
have
just
to.
sell him on like, hey, you want to put Suns fans in hell?
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere that Ayton and Luca have the same agent.
I believe you are correct, but I'm
um
not 100% sure. But
I'm
yeah,
like
that would be
85%
I
chance.
think if I'm Luka, that's what I'm selling him on. Is like, look, you don't like the Suns, right? You know what would make them sadder than anything is
If we made
two
it work
guys that they gave
together.
up. If you and I turn into a great partnership, and so
Yeah.
that it's how petty is DeAndre Ayton? We need to find this out. These are things that Luka can know if they have the same agent.
But I guess like that's when you ask what does a gap year look like, it's Rui and contracts for Ayton, and I think you could probably get a second rounder out of Portland for in that deal. And then whatever expiring you have left, you utilize to maybe help grease the tires or grease the wheels on another deal elsewhere, or maybe get another second rounder here or there. And maybe you use the couple of second rounders and I don't know, Dalton to go out and get more athletic at the two. And then you go into next season with a roster that may not be this exciting fireworks type, opening day, holy shit, the 2025 Dodgers type of roster, but you could still have one that makes enough sense to where you can be competitive and see where that gets you. Because like here's the thing too, Harrison. I the whole notion of talent versus balance and fit, like that. I saw Kirk was ranting about this about the Mavericks today on Twitter, where it's like people are just penciling them in for 50 wins because they look and they see Anthony Davis and they see Klay Thompson and they see Cooper Flagg and they see PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, and you see all these names that you recognize and they're good at basketball, but the fit there is so bad and makes so little sense that there's no chance they get to 50 wins unless they make a move here or there to make that roster make more sense. And I think the Lakers are kind of stuck in the same boat where you look at it and you look at some of the guys in a vacuum and you say, oh, I like Dorian Finney-Smith. I like Rui Hachimura. I obviously love Luka. I obviously really, really like LeBron. I really, really like Austin. But then you like look at it all added together and you compare it to some of these teams that fit better, right? OKC fits like a glove. That everybody on that roster makes a ton of sense. The Indiana Pacers, there's like no fat on in that rotation. None. And I don't know. I think if I'm the Lakers, you really have to consider maybe a slight downgrade in talent for the sake of fit. And I think that's something that they're really kind of staring in the face this year. And I think this would be the year to do that, in this quote unquote stopgap year.
I think as long as you can do it where you're taking on like reclamation project guys and you're taking on like guys that, Luka and LeBron can talk themselves into saying we can get the most out of this guy. And then you're also saying, like, look, we get this guy, you like this guy, it's like you jingle the key. Hey, new player, he hasn't pissed you off by missing defensive rotations yet. And then it's like, but also we get all this financial flexibility for down the line to continue to build around you, Luka. Like, I think that's how you have to do it. So I don't think that when you say gap year, I don't think that you can just, trade off guys for parts and try to get picks and just be like, okay, it doesn't matter what happens this year. It's got to be guys that who are maybe overpaid, but can contribute a little bit, or that these guys can sell themselves on being able to compete while also freeing up future financial flexibility.
Yeah, I'm looking it up and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they do share. They are both under Bill Duffy.
I just put together a trade for you while you were talking, by the way, that I think solves all of the Lakers' problems.
I'm nervous about this, Harrison.
I think you should just screen share it without even looking.
Well, I'm not going to do that. Ooh, that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see if I can. I'm going to put this here and image. And here we go. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Image. There we go. All right. Let's see what you guys think. This is Harrison, not me, on the trade machine.
Now, again, this was just off the cuff. I'm just looking at ideas of, are there guys that the Lakers can go for that help them win now, that fit within those contracts, whatever. Like, obviously, 4-for-2 trades are kind of hard to pull off, but you can do it during the offseason. This is just a rough draft. I didn't put any picks in because I'm not messing around with what Brooklyn would want in terms of pick compensation. But this is the kind of thing where you get better right now. You have
Brooklyn needing picks? I don't think Brooklyn would need picks. If anything, I would say the Lakers need picks.
The Lakers have to include picks.
No. Like I would you're giving up Austin and also picks?
Well, then maybe you're not. I don't know. I don't think that you are trading for, I don't think the Nets are giving up Claxton and Johnson, just for the right to pay Austin and Rui,
Yeah, well, I think Rui or Austin, yeah, probably. Rui, maybe not. I think that would maybe give them a little pause, but of the assets going anywhere in this trade, Austin is far and away the most valuable. So
probably, but he's about to get paid.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily arguing for this trade. I'm just saying, if you're looking to fulfill needs and you're looking to sort of stretch the skill sets out and make it a little bit more diverse on the roster, this is the kind of thing that I think have to consider.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it doesn't, and maybe Austin is valued enough that it doesn't require you to throw in picks, and then that's even better because it keeps your sort of flexibility open for the future potentially.
The issue I'm seeing here again, though, is that Cam Johnson, he's a little bit more mobile than Dorian, but not by much, and I'm worried that you would kind of slip into the same issue. Especially with Claxton being so small that, again, all of your money.
Yeah, Claxton is not my favorite of the center targets, to be honest, because he's so slight. And I think that it's just a higher class version of the Jackson Hayes problem. Obviously he's way better than Jackson Hayes, but it's just in the playoffs functionally, how much is he enough to be worth giving up stuff for? Is he enough of a difference? And I don't think so.
It's a fun trade for the audio listeners here. Harrison's trade was Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson going to the Lakers, and then Rui and Austin, Gabe and Goodwin going to Brooklyn. If you could swap out Goodwin for Shake, I think I'd be more interested in it as well. Because
I just was throwing names into the trade machine to make this happen.
Well, I'm just saying because Goodwin will actually
take Shake back.
Yeah, well, they should.
Hey, welcome back.
No, the funnier part of that is the Lakers including Shake to the Nets and be like, you know what, man, we should have asked for Sharp in the first place. Can we get him instead?
Yeah. We had a Brooks situation here with the SH names.
Yeah, they thought he was Daron Holmes from Denver and had a torn Achilles. You know what's funny is I had thought at the time that the Lakers asked about Sharp in that steal last year to get Dorian. But it turns out that no, the Lakers didn't ask for Sharp at all, in that they were more interested uh in Shake. I saw Trevor
Well,
mention that, and then I'd heard that over the course of the year too. Um, and the people who mentioned that to me were not particularly thrilled that that was the case.
Well, Rob saw Shake on his local channels going off it for his career high against the Clippers. We already figured this out because he doesn't have
Oh
a
yeah,
league pass, so he got that one on FS West.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the other part of this, the last part of this is with Luka getting ready for that extension, or hopefully getting ready for that extension. All of this work needs to be done before he actually signs that dotted line. And if the Lakers don't do enough to sway Luka and he doesn't sign his extension, what DEFCON level are you going into next season?
DEFCON, I don't know, but you'd be concerned.
I mean, why wouldn't it be like 1 or 2?
Well, wait, is DEFCON the one where it's like
It
one
reverses,
is like the
right?
highest?
So like that, like everybody makes this mistake where they go, it's like it's DEFCON 5, and it's like actually it's like
Okay, so
a slight
DEFCON 5 is
drizzle.
lower than DEFCON 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I'd say like DEFCON 5 or 4. I don't think you're quite at 1 yet.
Okay.
You're worried about it, but you can still pay him more than anyone else can. And, you still have a year to prove to him that you can, sort of put together.
I guess that's true. He doesn't have to sign right on August, right? Right in August.
No.
He can sign his extension, I feel like, at any time before the season starts. Or
you
maybe
would know
during
better
the
than
season.
me.
I have to look that up. I'll find that information and I'll include that in tonight's lowdown. But yeah, that's the other part of this is I think the one situation that the Lakers absolutely have to avoid almost at all costs, Harrison, is that exact circumstance where you put that extension on the table for Luka and he looks at the roster and he says, not enough.
And that's a real thing. Like, he's going to be signing, at probably minimum 3 years away of his sort of prime and decision making away to you. And so you have to prove to him that, you are worthy of that commitment, if given how good he is.
Yeah.
And so that's again, like, going back to the gap year thing. That's why I don't think that you can just straight up just be like, hey, we're going to sort of, do the thing that they did the second Russ year where they're like, hey, yeah, we didn't really find any deals we're going to run it back.
I mean, this is where it's tough because usually
maybe there's more stuff in midseason,
most teams. And again, I'm not going to complain. I'm trying to not sound like I'm complaining about this for those listeners who follow other teams who think I'm saying something along the lines of like, woe is me. We got Luka too soon.
Yeah.
But that said, most teams, when you get a Luka, when you draft a Luka, you're kickstarting a rebuild. You're in the middle of a rebuild. You have other assets to work with. The Lakers are so asset strapped because it's on the tail end of a LeBron era. So like it's this kind of high wire act that they're trying to
they
maneuver
moved
here.
Basically one of their only assets and the guy that like two of their only assets, and Christie and the pick, as well as like the guy that still has a ton of value obviously in AD, but that they had depleted all of their assets trying to build around already. So It's like usually when you have a star trade like this, you're trading some of those picks to bring in that guy. You haven't been trading, to build around the guy that you're sending out.
Yeah, it's a thing that, again, every other team in the NBA would happily
it's a good problem. It's a champagne problem.
Yeah. But it's still like problem is there in the name still. Like it's still it's something that nobody wants to, oh man, I got a Benz and a Ferrari and I don't know which one to use. Like it's tough.
I only have one slot in my garage, It's just like
and it's alien.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's a great problem. I would love to have that problem, but it's still a problem. It's like, hey, how do I keep the other car clean?
Right. All All right, let's dive into some of the super. We have a couple super comments here. So I get to play this. By the way,
all right,
speaking
we're
of,
so back. It doesn't even feel bad to play that anymore. Like there's been enough separation. Like when you played it, like the on the like the post Jason Tatum injury show, I was like, oh, like I don't. This doesn't feel right, even for me right now. But now I think enough time has passed that we can
well,
go
especially
back
seeing
to
is like
hating that entire city.
Well, according to Celtics media, Tatum might be back next week.
Yeah, he had a pioneering surgery. It's he was
every
the
other
first person
player
to
in the
ever
history of all of sports has
Yeah.
needed at least a full year to recover, and they're like,
well,
he could be back
he
by
is
the
only
deadline.
19.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think that's like incredibly irresponsible. The stuff that I've seen coming out of Boston on this front, like they're really setting up Tatum for failure. Where
I almost wonder if that's the Celtics.
You don't know.
I almost wonder if that's the Celtics trying to build leverage in like theoretical trade talks for this offseason of saying like, no, we're not necessarily going into the tank. Like you got to give us stuff for these guys.
Yeah, maybe. It still feels really irresponsible because now fans. It's one thing if you
yeah, I agree. I hate when teams do this with players and their injuries and sort of like, and for all we know, it's Tatum's camp putting out that he could be back sooner.
Maybe.
And then in that case, it's, hey, if he wants to put that pressure on himself, great. But yeah, I don't like when teams are sort of like, hey, we think that this guy could be back way sooner. And then so if he's not, get mad at him. I guess he doesn't care.
and one thing is for sure, one thing Boston is famous for is treating their players fairly. All right, Jason, JK Productions asks, two inescapable realities the Lakers face. One, Luka's happiness is more important than keep his job Rob. Two, they are going to lose LeBron for nothing. That is kind of tough. Number two is a little tough.
Is JK the one that came up with keep his job Rob on the show the other day? That is incredible, Jason. And I am so mad that I didn't think of that.
He said it. I think he put it in a comment, and I was like, "Damn, I've been covering this guy for half a decade, and it somehow."
And we've even been making the point that he just wants to keep his job, and we never thought to rhyme him. It's such a good nickname.
So number two, there's not much else to say about it. LeBron's going to retire, and you're going to lose a really good asset for nothing.
I mean, you can't like sign and trade him to Medicaid or something. It's like there's not assets you can get back.
I wonder if like since LeBron's gonna dive right into team ownership, you could do like a trade where like you trade his rights to his own team. Yeah,
it's like, look, LeBron, if you want to go Jackie Moon, you have to negotiate for your own rights with us.
You get their expansion draft pick.
LeBron trades for himself in his first move as team owner.
Number one, Luka's happiness is more important than keep his job Rob. Well, the thing that Rob has always been really good at doing is facilitating that happiness so as to keep his job. So
yeah, we know if there's one thing LeBron's gonna or Rob is gonna focus on, it's keeping Luka happy. That's like his primary motivation is not building a champion. It is keeping Luka happy until he needs to blame him for a transaction and stab him in the back to keep his job.
Yeah.
This saw is the cycle. He's going to do everything Luka wants, and then if it doesn't go well, he's just going to blame Luka. And if it does go well, he's going to say, "Look at how collaborative I am. I'm super helpful. This is the kind of guy you want building around stars. I work so well with them."
Yeah, I still like a small part of me still looks at that Mark Williams trade with very cynical eyes.
Yeah, me too.
And is like, and Rob goes.
LeBron hadn't gotten a chance to talk to Luka yet, and be like, no, don't tell this guy exactly names of players you want. It does not go well. You got to hint at archetypes
because
and say
the trade happens.
I'm not the GM.
Yeah, the trade happens, and Rob immediately throws it out there. Well, Luka made it clear to me that he wanted a center, so I went out and I got Luka a center.
Yeah.
It just so happens that, oh, man, shoot, he didn't pass our physical. Darn.
Yeah.
Dang, that's too bad. Jason also writes, really tough to build a team around Luka long-term when his second best player, who sometimes is better than him, will leave the team for zero return. What I will say about like the zero return thing, and we saw this with Paul George leaving the Clippers last year, is smart organizations find ways. It's not an apples to apples thing. You don't get a direct return in terms of the financial flexibility when a player like that leaves via free agency, or in this case, likely retirement. It's not quite that simple, but the Clippers made it work. And I think we're better last year than they were the year prior with Paul on the team.
Yeah. Almost certainly. And I also think that, it's not 1-to-1, as you said, where, it's like, hey, LeBron retires, so you have 50 million in cap space because the Lakers are going to have other commitments. They have rights to exceed the cap to keep LeBron on their books because of how long he's been around. But you do gain some measure of financial flexibility that, you can use and sort of weaponize to go and get extra help. Again, you're not going to get a LeBron, but you're also not necessarily getting nothing. Like if your GM makes smart signings and trades.
Yeah.
Which is a big if, but it's
the tough part is that like you're not going to get any picks. There's no way to get any picks whenever he and look, like I don't want to sound ungrateful because LeBron has been really, really good for the Lakers and to the Lakers. But it is one of those things where a top, like I bet if he was to retire right after next season, you're talking about like a top 20 player was on your team and is no longer on your team, and you don't have a ton of assets to just like make up for it. It is going to be a tough spot. Fortunately, look, the Lakers do,
which goes more to your point of keeping the powder dry and trying to find some sort of middle path towards competing this year versus like, hey, we're going to throw, all of the available picks that we have at the wall to try and build around this. And then it's like, well, shit, like, in 1 year, 2 years, when LeBron retires, we don't have that many available draft picks to sort of keep reloading around Luka.
Yeah, that's essentially exactly why I want to hold on. And this is me saying,
you got to work on the branding of gap year. You got to think of it as like it's a transition year, Yeah.
We're in semi-transition. It's like it's a good opportunity in transition.
We're in win now and later mode.
This season's brought to you by that candy.
Yeah, the now and laters. Yeah.
Yeah. Now and laters, cracking jaws since 1963. All right. I think that's good. Do you want to talk about Last of Us? I do have a couple of questions for you.
We can if you want, but I just got to say, this person in the comments who's saying Luka's already the most skilled player in Laker history is like we're not doing that.
Who is more skilled than Luka in Lakers history?
He's been here half a season. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, I understand you're going to root for your guy. This is a franchise that has some history. You could do that with a podunk franchise like the Mavs. It's not. We're not doing that here.
It's tough because I maintain Anthony Davis is one of the most talented players I've ever seen play in a Lakers uniform. But in my lifetime, I've watched Shaq, I've watched Kobe, I've watched LeBron, and that's just my lifetime.
I think you even were alive for Magic.
Well, I was born in 86, so I didn't see like absolute in his like I can't remember in his prime Magic Johnson. But like it's a pretty damn good list. Actually, I was thinking about this
Russell
last night,
Westbrook.
Harrison. See, all right, now we got to go. Now we have to leave. But I was thinking about this, of Mount Rushmore's out there, I think the Lakers easily is the best ever, right? I don't think anybody comes close to the Lakers Mount Rushmore.
Not yet. The only team that even has a somewhat argument is like maybe the Celtics, but they don't have like the star power.
You know who does? The Thunder have a pretty damn good Mount Rushmore.
Well, no, can it be your Mount Rushmore if your fans have like actively chiseled off one of the guy's faces? It's like I don't think KD gets to go on their Mount Rushmore. Like I don't think Thunder fans are putting him there. They're like, what did KD do that Jalen Williams hasn't?
Yeah, I did. I saw the debate. Like, is Shea already the best Thunder player ever? And I'm like, Shea is not as good
No.
as Kevin Durant.
Not
He might have a
KD,
better.
no.
He might have a better Thunder career than
He has a better
KD.
supporting cast than KD did.
Yeah,
Post-Harden.
probably, and a better coach, a much better coach, and
Yes.
you know. So, but anyway, like
How dare you disparage Lakers assistant brain trust member Scott Brooks? Unbelievable.
One of the coaches who was, yeah, sure, we shouldn't sub at all in the fourth quarter.
You're only bringing that up because JJ's inexperienced. Would you say that to an experienced coach?
Yes,
that's experiencist, Anthony.
I very much would. Like anti-ageist. Yeah. But I want to know what you thought about. So for those of you who are here for Lakers stuff, thank you everybody for joining in. I'll be back on the lowdown tonight, narrating whatever I write for Clutch Points here in a bit. Harrison and I are going to take a couple of minutes here to talk about The Last of Us because I hated this season. Hated it. Hated it. I thought.
And you played the game?
All right. So I started playing the game.
Wait, should we add a spoiler tag or whatever? Like,
okay, spoilers for Last of Us. For those,
we may accidentally discuss the Last of Us spoilers either for this season or future seasons. If you haven't watched this season yet, if you haven't played the game yet, like we may accidentally wander into spoiler territory without thinking about it. So I just want to give everyone like a, you know, I beat the game 3 times, so I have like a lot of thoughts and memories about the game, and so I may just like reference something that's past this season without thinking about it, and I want to be responsible for that and not accidentally ruin your viewing experience.
The reason I wanted to ask you specifically about this is because you have a cat named Ellie.
Yes.
And
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's fair. If your landlord is listening. But
Ellie is a nickname that we call Sasha sometimes.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. But I feel like the makers of the TV show hate Ellie. It's kind of like it's kind of like the like with the Superman, with the Cavill Superman. Like I thought every so often, Zack Snyder hated Superman because he just didn't understand like what Superman actually stands for. And at times here in this show, and especially in that finale, I thought the makers of the show hate Ellie.
Okay,
because they make her look terrible.
I don't think that that's true because the maker of the show is the same guy that made the games. Like one of the 2 showrunners is the guy who created Ellie and like literally birthed her from his brain, you know? So I don't think.
But do you think this was all him saying like, I made a big mistake?
He's like, yeah, she was too cool in the video game. Sorry. No,
they nerfed her in a video, in a show.
So I understand sort of the perspective of like, you know, this is not video game Ellie. Like she is not the same character like in a lot of different ways.
Yes,
and some of it I agree with because I think like in the world of the show, you're building an even more grounded world than the game is, where it's like, you know, you're almost operating by real life rules to some degree where, you know, you're not going to have Ellie go through like a level and like kill 20 wolves and with her bare hands and then like sneak out completely unscathed. Like that's a little unrealistic for a TV viewer. It becomes like a different show, I think, at that point. So I understand why they nerfed some of her physical capabilities where she's not going around like just dropping bodies, like, you know, like killing 80 people as she walks through Seattle. But I don't understand why they decided, they're like, well, to make her pairing with Dina work better, we're just going to make her an idiot. And like Dina is going to have to come up with the blue. That's the part that I don't agree with. I don't think that they hate Ellie. I think it was just maybe a misjudge to some degree of like what they had in her character and what, because again, she wasn't like, you know, the smartest operative in the entire world in the games, where like her plan was to go into Seattle by herself and, you know, kill a bunch of people and rescue her basically her uncle. But, you know, which isn't the greatest plan, admittedly, but it's not like I'm just going to run down this dark corridor because I'm like immune. And so who cares if they like bite into my jugular?
So to me, the macro problem with this season was that the first game was and is and will always be a much better game than the second game to me. And
Story wise or gameplay wise?
Story wise.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say I actually enjoy playing the second game more. I think
The
they
second
made some
game though
like
reminded me
quality
too
of
much of
life.
just like every other zombie game where it's just like kind of hack and slash your way through it. I thought the first game required a lot more kind of critical thinking, and again the story was incredible, and all that really matters for a, you know, when you're recreating a video game for the TV or movie screen, all that matters is the story. And if the story from the first game is stronger than the story from the second game, and you're devoting multiple seasons to the second game and only the one season to the first game, that's where I think you're going to run into some problems. And I think that's where we
So,
kept on bumping up against in this first season, in the second season.
so I agree with you to some degree that I think it was I knew that people were going to be mad about the end of this season when they announced that they were splitting the second game into 2 seasons at least.
Yeah.
Because there was no spot in the second game that was an easy leave off point for anyone. You know, like
Yeah.
there's no natural ending spot in the second game where it's like, well, check in a year, you know, because that's the advantage of the game is, you know, you can have these cliffhangers, but then it's like, okay, if you want to go play 8 hours tonight, you can find out what's going to happen next. Like it's all there for you. You can get all your answers, you know, and it's not going to end on like a gunshot and is this beloved character that alive or dead, or you know, do the creators hate her or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think they were sort of damned if they did, damned if they didn't, because I think if they would have tried to cram the second game into one season, I think it would have felt way too rushed. And especially like with HBO apparently only greenlighting 7 episode seasons now, you know, like there's just no way the second game is like 20 plus hours. There's no way you could do that in one season of television. The first game is shorter.
Yeah.
And so I just think the second game was always going to be harder to adapt into TV as well because of the perspective shift to Abby midway through, you know, and it's like you're asking the audience to invest a lot to keep coming back week to week to this character that they hate. And I think that season 3 is actually going to probably be received worse than season 2 in some ways, because unless like they find a way to bring in Abby and make you like her sort of right off the bat, or tease something going on with Ellie, like are people going to want to wait, you know, 4
But
episodes into the season to find out what happened to Ellie?
like, I actually feel like right now, if you just base it off of what we've seen in the show, Abby is actually a more interesting character because Ellie, it's one thing to be like, all right, I'm going after the girl who killed Joel. I'm gonna go get her, and I'm going alone, you know. But like as soon as they get there, and then Dina says, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and they have this moment while there's a war zone in front of them, and Ellie
Yeah.
thinks it's still worth it to her. And I guess I'm biased because I have kids, but as soon as Ellie decides that this kid that I'm going to be the father figure for someday, or the parental figure for someday.
She said dad.
Yeah, she did say dad.
Yeah.
But like, um, the as soon as you have that character say, "I'm willing to go through this war zone," like when you have a kid, all of your personal grudges, they fall by the wayside. It's like Jesse said,
Yeah.
"I'm getting my kid out of here.
Yep.
I'm getting, you know, the people I love out of here." And you know, it's like, okay, that's the example. And once you have a character say, "Yeah, sure, I have this other literal life and death responsibility on my hands, and I'm still going to pursue this."
But I
Yeah,
think
like
that's
that.
what the story is about. The story is about what lengths will we go to if we feel like we have been wronged and seeking justice. Like you can say, you know, you have a kid, you know, so you can
Mhm.
talk about that. It's like, you know, you probably view Joel's decision differently than some people, because it's like, did he basically commit war crimes and, you know, like do some unspeakable horrible things that even he can probably agree are like quote
Yeah,
unquote wrong, and potentially deny humanity a cure to this, like, you know, disaster wreaking virus? Like, yes, he did, but
but
that was his kid.
that's
That's his
another.
surrogate, like baby. And so
Yeah.
he did that. And so you go into season 2 and it's like, can I understand why Abby did what she did and went to the lengths that she did when you killed her dad and like all of her friends and
Yeah.
all of that stuff? It's like, yeah, like if you were Abby's friend and she was telling you about this, you would view it differently, but you view it differently right now because it's Joel and it's a character that you care about. And so then again, but with how much you love Joel, what lengths would you go to go and after him? And like, what lengths would you go to get your quote unquote justified revenge for how he was taken from you? And I think that's what the second game is ultimately about, is like, when do you stop? Like, when do you just let bygones be bygones? Yeah, of the treadmill and like the cycle of violence.
Yeah.
And it's like the point is everyone feels justified in committing their violence. There's no one, I mean, there are obviously like psychopaths out there and people who like just do terrible things because they enjoy it. But in most of these cases where people are doing these unspeakable things, and this is what the game explores, is like they feel like they are right and they feel like they are responding righteously to some wrong that has been done to them.
Yeah. No, I think the second game presents that in a really smart way. I really wish, Harrison, they would have stuck closer to the first game in how unrealistic it felt that could be that the cure could be mass produced and actually save the world, right?
Yeah.
Like once I thought in the show they admitted that, yeah, Joel basically damned everybody to this. I think they did Joel and Ellie a disservice.
Well, but I
Because
think the thing
if I'm
is
Joel,
you're supposed to be left to wonder. Well, they can say that whatever. Like, I guess they write the show, and so what they say is canon. But in your head, you can look at the facts that Joel had, and he didn't know for certain if they could have made a cure. Like, how would he know for sure?
well, but that's the thing. He said, yeah, like she said, could a cure have worked or this, and he said like point blank, yeah, and
It
in the
could,
second game he
but
says,
he didn't know.
huh?
It could, but he didn't know.
Yeah,
He doesn't
I
know that
think
for sure. He has no way to
that's
know
left
for
a
sure.
lot
And he would have
more.
done it anyway, probably. But it's like, you also have to acknowledge the reality that this is not a vaccinologist. This is like a guy who was like, I think, a vet that became like a surgeon in the apocalypse, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Or, like whatever. Like, you don't know for a fact that he could have manufactured a world-saving cure for this thing.
Well, I would even go so far as to say I was skeptical that he could. So I actually supported Joel's decision in the first game because it's like, you're murdering my daughter. You have no means. Like you're murdering my daughter on the chance that you're going to actually get a cure from her, and you have no means.
Joel's done worse. The counterpoint is that Joel's done worse for less.
Totally. No, I'm not saying Joel was the objectively good character. But I will say though that like when it happened in the game, it was like, yeah, I think that he was right. And again, I like you said, I'm biased because I actually have a daughter. And if you were sitting here and telling me like, you're gonna take my daughter from me on the off chance that you're gonna get a cure, and I'm looking at your setup.
But don't worry,
here,
we're pretty sure.
Right. Well, I'm also looking at your setup here, and I don't see a giant ass factory that's going to save everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you manufacturing this cure?
Right. So it's like that's where in the game, the second game made more sense because like if I'm Ellie and I'm like, man, you really tracked me all the way back here from
in an apocalypse.
In an apocalypse while you have a community to serve.
Years later.
Yeah. Like that's where I say like I think the show is doing a bit of a disservice to Ellie because that makes her stance more realistic. But that was a choice that they made for this TV show. And when it's like actually Joel did damn everybody and she was probably right to kill Joel, not just out of respect for her father, but because Joel deserves to die if he damns the world to continue to live in this apocalypse when we could have made a cure. Like that's where I don't know. I thought that was a weird choice by the show.
That whole premise always falls flat to me, though, because I understand, like, there's not many people left with medical, expertise, obviously, and that's not like, getting med schools up and running is not like the biggest priority in the world that they're living within, so soon after the apocalypse, and like humanity's still sort of just barely getting on its feet in some places, to the point where they're like trading weed for therapy and, stuff like that. That's like a very valuable skill set. But like, you're telling me that, okay, this like vet surgeon, whatever guy working at a hospital just randomly in Utah could have created a cure for humanity when all of humanity was overrun by this thing. But we couldn't have anyone like look at medical textbooks for a while and, eventually do their own surgery on Ellie if she was willing to sacrifice herself and do that. It's like, he didn't damn humanity. He just made it harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, if there was a doctor in Utah, why is there only one doctor everywhere?
Yeah, you're telling me he's the only surgeon that survived the apocalypse?
Yeah. But yeah, that's where, again, Abby's actions look tougher in the light, but they don't frame it that way. If anything, they've really contracted the world down in this season.
I almost wonder if they're trying to make her more sympathetic off the bat so that it's not as hard of a jump for you when you go and start following her in the next season.
Yeah, I think
they're like, we got to make her as justified as possible for doing this terrible thing so that you will still stick around to see what's going on with her and continue out the story.
I actually think there's a way to humanize her even further where, like, if Isaac is telling her we need to kill women and children, and she stands up and says, I don't really want that. And that's why she goes AWOL,
Well, did you finish the second game?
Well, I stopped playing it. So like, I've just watched whatever, but
okay.
Like,
so I'm about to potentially spoil something for those of you not interested in The Last of Us spoilers. Jump off the stream right now. 1, 2, 3. That is exactly why Ellie or Abby goes AWOL.
Yeah, well, it's right there, Yeah,
I mean,
if I'm able to think of it,
Yeah,
and again, like if that's gonna make people like Abby more. There's a chance here, Harrison, where Abby is the more popular character than Ellie.
You start the second, like I've talked to people who played the game and they're like, yeah, during that, during the first time I controlled Abby, I just let her die repeatedly, in like horrible ways. And then it's like, by the end of her arc, you're like, kind of like, oh my God, I like this girl.
Yeah. Right. I think there's a chance here because of how the second season played out for Ellie. Because, dude, she's having every sign in the world thrown at her just to say, give it up. Go back.
The game does that too. Again, she does these like horrible things, and it's like you're always left to question yourself of like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, and
she actually does worse things in the game.
Yeah, well, maybe that's the point. Maybe it's a Sopranos situation where, like, by the end of the show, you really hate Gandolfini's character, right? You really hate Tony by the end of that show because it's like, God, this guy sucks. And when the screen goes blank and it appears maybe he may have got, you're kind of like, you know what? Good. Like a small part of you is
it's like when Breaking Bad ends. It's like, I've watched all this stuff with you, but like, you probably do not deserve to live a happy ending. You know?
And maybe that's what they're going for here. And if they execute it well, then I'll go back and I can rewatch the whole series and I can arrive.
The second game does not have the happiest ending.
It's in an apocalypse.
All I'm gonna say is it's not like the game ends and everybody's at sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, well, it's an apocalypse.
There's still many things to be sad about in the world of The Last of Us if they choose to make The Last of Us 3, which I think they will.
If there was any game change that could have been, like, any change to the game that could have been made to where season 2 of the show carries better, because for me it's like, is there a version of the show where Abby like seriously injures Joel but doesn't kill him? Like,
does that improve the show though? Like, I feel like that like makes Ellie even less justified in going to Seattle to go after her.
Well, but
he's still alive. Like, it's all things considered.
Well, but if it appears he's on his deathbed and she just says, you know what? damn it, screw it, I'm going, Um, and then that at least gives you the opening, because the problem with Joel dying to me is that like there is no in Ellie's mind, there is no going back. There is no bringing Joel
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And that basically takes the the opportunity from her to be like, all right, I just found out this girl that I love is carrying a child, and
Mhm.
she's presenting me a situation here where I'm now going to be her partner, and I am going to be this kid's parental figure. I need to come home. I need to snap out of it. I need to come home. And you know, if Joel is gone, that's gone to her. That's never going to be an option. But if Joel is just seriously hurt, like paralyzed or even critically injured, to where you're not sure if he's going to be able to make it, you can run off in a huff and then get there and then find this out and then maybe come back. And then maybe then you have Abby search her out by, telling her camp that there's this giant camp in my Wyoming that has all of these resources and we should at least go check it out. Then
Well, as you will find out, that's not Abby's primary motivate. Like she's not like a colonizer where she's
no,
well, I guess she sort of is working for the wolves, but she does not want to leave Seattle
she
and go
doesn't like
take
that part
resources
of
from. She
the
doesn't want to go
wolves.
raid other
Yeah.
places necessarily. Like she wants to create a community that is safe for everyone in Seattle. The way that her and her people go about that, I think, is pretty bad. But they have a goal in mind of creating a place for themselves within Seattle and creating a community there. They're not like, hey, let's go rob Jackson. Like they're trying to build their own Jackson.
Yeah.
And so I think like I don't think that you have the generating force for the story to move forward without Joel dying. But I also like I understand why that upsets people and why that makes the second game a lot more controversial for people, because it's like, hey, you made us like really fall in love with this guy and then you kill him 2 hours in, and
Yeah.
it's like now we're trying to deal with that and figure out like, okay, how do characters respond to that? What do you do if you feel like you have nothing to lose, if you're started to be presented with things to lose, but you still feel like, you're that angry and you have nothing to lose, and it's like, well, I can't abandon this mission. This is like, I owe this guy. Like he got me alive across the world. He was my stand-in father figure, even if we had major disagreements.
Yeah, I guess what I'm essentially getting to is I wish there was a version of the show or a version of the game where you could just turn back, and that's not really how video games work. You have to finish the game. We're all completionists, but I don't know. To me, as soon as they're standing on the roof and there's artillery shells going off in the distance, and you have to go past those artillery shells to get to where they think they need to get, and this girl just tells me, "Yeah, I'm carrying a kid." I don't know. To me, it's a pretty cut and dry situation. You
In
should
the
be
game,
allowed
it
to in the
makes
game just be like, "All right, I'm done. I'm
I
out."
think for TV, the reason they changed some of this was that, they didn't want to have just Ellie by herself, because that's not compelling as a TV thing. Where, like, if you're playing the game, you're still entertained because you are going around and like completing these missions and whatever. You don't
Yeah, that's a
necessarily
great point.
need someone to talk to. But in the show, they needed someone to talk to, and so they kind of had to make Dina go with her. And because as a spoiler for the video game, she is so morning sick that she can like barely leave the movie
Yeah.
theater, and so it's Ellie going out and doing these things each day while Dina is back. And so there's a little bit more of the like, well, at least Dina's safe over that. Like she's not safe and she's malnourished and there's health issues that you're having to worry about, but I'm not like bringing her out to come fight the zombies while she's pregnant.
Yeah. But even still, it's like, hey, I can't leave this house, and I'm so sick because I'm pregnant that I can't leave this safe house.
Yeah.
That's where every other parent, Harrison, every other decent parent, every other decent human being says, I have to keep that person safer than she is right now. And
And in some ways, it's Ellie making the opposite choice of Joel, where she's saying the revenge is more important to me than protecting the people that I love.
yeah, and that's where again, like I don't know, maybe we are supposed to arrive at the end of it and really quite, but I just know, given you literally named your cat after Ellie, there's a lot of people who really, really, really love Ellie,
Yeah.
but she's a monster. Like her actions are that of a monster.
Well, you're also grading on a scale because it's video games, and so it's like in every video game, every protagonist in a video game where you kill people is like sort of objectively like not someone you'd want to hang out with necessarily. It's like, you know, if you're going around like dropping 100 bodies, like I don't know that we're gonna be best friends. Like,
I guess my PlayStation ID icon is Altair, and he was an assassin, so fair. But
yeah, and you know, it's like God of War. You're like, oh man, Kratos, he's such a great poppy, and he's like chopping people in half on a regular basis, and
in
like,
front
you
of
know,
his kid.
yeah,
his kid's like,
you know,
12,
it's just like you're grading on a
gotta aim a
scale
little
in
higher,
video
son.
games a little bit. But I mean, we named her. You know, we if we were to have a second cat, we would potentially name them that because you know, they got a little bit of an attitude. They're mouthy, and they always keep that switchblade on them. And so
just be careful. Like if Sasha steps wrong, just keep them separated, because Ellie might go on a revenge tour.
I'm going to tell you one thing. If I was murdered in front of Sasha, he would not seek out the killer. He would.
Dude, my favorite meme right now is like the dogs that like they give them a bowl of food and then they pretend to be like attacked at the front door, and the dog is sitting there eating while they're getting attacked at the front door. Those are funny. But all right, that's good. Harrison, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and thank you for sticking around with us while we talk about The Last of Us for the final bit of this. I feel a little bit better about the show. We'll see how they do with season 3.
I think it's a show that's going to be better for people to binge watch, because it's going to be an easier binge watch than it is going to be waiting years and weeks and whatever between episodes, where, you know, more like the game, you can sort of jump forward at your own pace.
Yeah. We'll see. I find it hard to believe that the point of the show is to make Abby the antagonist eventually, because there's a world in which she is.
Well, she's not really. She's
no. I mean that Ellie. I mean that like there's a world where we finish the show, and Ellie is the antagonist, because you weigh her actions and Joel's actions up against Abby's, and Abby actually shines in a better light. You know,
I will say, if you want to see those complicated, like it continues to get more complicated. So
great. I hope so. I hope I hope it isn't such an easy.
It really makes it hard to take a side.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the point. I mean, nobody like it. You know, We Are the Monsters is the point of a lot of apocalyptic.
Pretty much the point of that game is We Are the Monsters, and there's a lot of monsters in the world.
We'll stick around for more monsters talk on the lowdown when I talk more about the 2 timelines with Luka and LeBron.
Seamless segue.
Harrison, anything that you want to plug before we get you out here?
No, just check out sbnation.com for your coverage of the finals. We got some fun stuff coming up, but yeah, that's about it.
And we are in draft season, and Ricky's draft season content is the best. So check out.
And then obviously, if you're getting into the WNBA, we have 2 writers right now covering that for .com, and Noah Dalzell and Chelsea Late, who are doing a great job. And so, yeah, definitely check that out if you're sort of just trying to get into the WNBA this season, or you're new from last season, or you've been around for forever. Like, there should be stuff for everyone.
Yep. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Bye, everyone.